Hello, and welcome to our discussion on Infernal Affairs versus The Departed. And this has been a very interesting movie for our group to examine. And as you've seen from my other colleagues, we've examined some of the other things about these movies that make it very interesting. And today I want to talk about the reception of both of these movies. So let's get started. When we look at the reception in terms of money, looking at the IMDb numbers, we see that Infernal Affairs had a budget of around $6.5 million. In the United States and in Canada, it earned about $169,000. Looking at the gross worldwide total, we have about $8.8 million. So definitely got some of its money back, but it did not quite perform money wise as The Departed did in the United States. Looking at The Departed, it had about a $90 million estimated budget. In the United States and Canada alone, it earned $132 million. Looking at gross worldwide earnings, it got about $291 million. So, aka a lot of money. When we look at the face value critics reviews, or just the reception of the movie, so Infernal Affairs got a 94 on the tomato meter with 63 critics reviews in total. For the audience score, it was a 95% on 50,000 plus reviews. So overall, the movie did perform pretty well among critics and audiences. Looking at The Departed, on the tomato meter, it got 90% on 282 reviews, and an audience score of 94% on 250 plus thousand reviews. So did not quite perform as well with critics and with the audience, but still performed very well, especially considering that it had quadruple the amount of reviews that Infernal Affairs was receiving. Looking at one of the specific reviews, we have G. Allen Johnson for Infernal Affairs, who said it was a masterful match of wit and ingenuity, a cat and mouse game of the highest order. And I think that's a very good way to describe this film because you have these two characters. One is a government mole. One is a mole for gangsters in the police force. One is an undercover cop within the gang, and they're trying to find each other. It's a very interesting dynamic. And one thing that G. Allen Johnson praises that a lot of reviewers do is that the character dynamic in this movie is very interesting with the whole cat and mouse agenda. Directors walk a tightrope between character study and action tour de force. So this movie's not going to wow you with the action because there's not a ton, but the action does work. Hi, buddy. Sorry, I'm recording my assignment.
Sorry.
It's all good. So there's not a ton of action in this movie, but the action does suffice. And it is a very interesting character study, seeing how these two characters would try to find each other. G. Allen Johnson gives this movie a 4 out of 4. Looking at one of the negative reviews for Infernal Affairs, Brian McKay says that he didn't hate the movie, but he didn't really love it either. He thought there were some interesting twists and that the directing was solid, but the movie just doesn't quite find a pulse for him. He mentioned that the action of the movie wasn't superb. There wasn't a ton of action. He said that can kind of bore you at points. And he was also unsatisfied with the lack of, with the underdeveloped characters and subplots. And this is a fair point because they do introduce some side characters and some romantic subplots, but they never really dive into them. So Brian Mackey says that this does kind of take away from the film. Gives it a 3 out of 5 overall, so not a bad score, but definitely not raving the movie by any means. Looking at Robert Roten's opinion on this movie, he says that the story emphasizes the degree to which criminals and cops are alike, exploring the gray area between good and evil, right and wrong. And this is a very interesting way to look at this movie because both of these characters, they're not perfect. They do some good things, they do some bad things, they change throughout the movie. But overall, they're not 100% through and through good or evil. And Robert Roten also thought that while the characters were pretty solid and that the movie itself was solid, that the romantic subplots were underdeveloped as well, which is a valid critique considering that these romantic subplots were not really explored. Overall, he thought it was a good film with good production values, good acting and whatnot, and gave it a solid B, which is overall a pretty good grade. Shifting our focus to The Departed. According to Mike Massey said it's an intoxicating blend of suspense, romance, underworld drama, and blood-soaked action. Infernal Affairs, while it was somewhat graphic, definitely wasn't nearly as graphic as The Departed. The Departed is willing to go into much more grotesque violence and just grotesque material in general. And like the reviews for Infernal Affairs, he also said that the character dynamics in this movie were very good. He was impressed with the production aspect, including the editing, and the editing of The Departed is very, very good. I will admit that regardless of your opinion on the movie, the editing was pretty solid. Gives it a 10 out of 10 overall, which is a very, very high rating. Looking at David Walsh's opinion on this movie, David Walsh essentially was very unhappy with Martin Scorsese because he felt like Martin Scorsese could have taken this movie as a moment to do commentary on bigger social issues and instead attributed evil to human nature or a fault of human nature instead of actually, in Walsh's opinion, trying to understand the idea of social influence creating evilness. And as we mentioned, he said that Scorsese prefers to see violence as a part of fallen human nature and as a fixed, frozen view of life and human character. Essentially, he didn't like the fact that the characters felt stagnant in their moral beliefs one way or the other. And overall, while he did not give a score of the movie, David Walsh did say that he did give the movie a rotten score, feeling unsatisfied with The Departed. And ending on a positive review for The Departed, we have Danielle Sulzman, who said that Scorsese's third collaboration with Leonardo DiCaprio also manages to result as one of the greatest gangster films of all time. Danielle Sulzman loved this movie, thought it was incredible, raved about a whole lot of different aspects of this movie as well, including the production value, the directing, and whatnot, but was very, very impressed by the performance of Leonardo DiCaprio, which is a very valid point because Leonardo DiCaprio has proven time and time again that he's a very competent, well-rounded actor, and he does show it off in this movie, in my opinion. I'll try to keep my opinions out. Sulzman even went on to say that this movie's Oscar was Scorsese's career Oscar, aka his defining moment at the Academy Awards. Giving it a 5 out of 5, Daniel Sulzman loved The Departed. So here are my sources, and I'll take this moment to do one more quick analysis on both the movies. Essentially, both these films were received very positively. Overall, it was not easy finding negative reviews about these movies, and both these movies did receive critical acclaim. They both were loved for what they were. Both were praised for their character dynamics, proving to be a very interesting character dynamic with the cat and mouse chase between the gangster mole and the undercover cop. But as I mentioned earlier, one of the key differences in this movie is that The Departed feels a lot darker. It's willing to be more morally just dark. It's willing to be more blunt with its violence and its moral repugnance. The Infernal Affairs doesn't quite go into as much grotesque detail as The Departed does. So essentially, those were the key differences. Both were received very well. Both received profit, which is important. And I think both were well liked in general. So if you all want me to make a video reviewing both of these and giving my own personal thoughts on that, I'm willing to do so. But I would like to thank you all for watching. Please feel free to like, share, subscribe, do all that. I'd like to thank my colleagues once again for doing a phenomenal job with their presentations. We've all worked really hard on this. We hope that you all enjoyed. Please, please, please give them some love as well. And once again, thank you all for watching. Check out both these movies. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.